Uh, it has been a great evening. Three important contributions by wonderful scholars on a very important book. And two corrections, Sabrina. I'm also getting old and retiring. I'm no longer the editor of Social Change. Riaz Ahmad is the new editor. And I'm no longer honorary fellow of ICS. I'm an emeritus fellow. All right. So, the three presentations already raise such fundamental issues arising out of the very important book. Anupama's contribution on citizenship dimension, how citizens have been transformed into or treated as beneficiaries. Whether the accomplishment has taken place or not is still a process. But the governance strategy treats them as beneficiaries. Then Suhas Palsika's equally important contribution on the strategy of governance, with focus on the political economy of governance and its many implications, taking the beneficiary argument a step forward. Samir's, I'm also behaving like an old person. I have seen the great journey of these people. Today they are great scholars. So I call them by their first names. Samir's, again, very important contribution on elections as technology of governance and transforming peoples into subjects. Not really political subjects, Samir. Political subject is far more empowering. It is subjects per se, citizens to subjects in the Mamdani sense. Okay, and you provided so many arguments. So much evidence of that. Subjects that are not malleable but manipulated and so on. So the three together really touch the essence of the book, which is the Indian story today under BJP rule. The Indian story is depicted very well in this book as it unfolded. Historically, from the RSS experience, but more so leading to the process, first 2014, then the 16 elections, and now. So what I'm going to do is to raise two sort of theoretical inferences from this very important discussion and this very important study, because I don't want to repeat what I have written in the foreword about the main arguments of the book, which other people have already summarized and reflected upon. This book tells us the systemic transformation that India is undergoing over the last 3 or more decades, from the Congress system, what was once described as the Congress system, to the Hindutva system. And this process has been very well explained with Assam case as the example, I would say. And all the three presentations have illustrated that. And this is the story. If I take the Odisha story or other, even the West Bengal story, if the attempt that failed a few months ago, is also unfolding that, even though there are local characteristics. And this systemic transformation of India is being attempted but resisted. The dynamics of this transformation has its own logic, and that will be my concluding part in a few minutes. And what is this transformation? it is a all India trend, and I would say to some extent a worldwide trend, a global trend, a theo-technocratic, neoliberal transformation taking place in the world. Here, the theocratic in India very clearly is religion, Hindutva. In the US, it is white racism. Somewhere it is Han chauvinism, the Chinese dream discourse, or the Great Russia discourse, the Turkish Islam discourse, and so on, and so on. So the theocratic, but it takes modern technology very seriously and commands it very effectively. Not only with a battery of communication experts who troll and manipulate the public opinion, defend, offend, shape public opinion, and so on. So that is a very integral part. And at the heart of it, and that is why they are only adjectives, the main force is neoliberal, the neoliberal process. And to Suhas, I would say, yes, regime. Regime has two meanings. One is the governmental system or the governance system, governmental system. The other is the order. It is in the sense of the political order. And so the order level change is taking place, or at least there is a trend, attempted trend. It is being registered, whether it is US, Turkey, Russia, but feeble resistance somewhere and more powerful resistance somewhere else. I think in India it is quite a significant resistance at multiple levels. It's not a cakewalk anywhere for this theo-technocratic neoliberal process. And it has Indian characteristics, and the Hindutva regime, Hindutva politics, has Indian characteristics, which are, all the three of them have spelled out very, very well. And it has Northeastern characteristics, and in fact, Himanta Biswa Sarma as the Northeast, convener for the last 5 years, and now Chief Minister, really built up that scenario so well, from, first creating a neglected Northeast to a beloved. I mean, if you see the statements, latest being, I think, Amit Shah's statement while presiding over the Karbi Anglong Accord last week, or on many occasions. Today, Northeast is at the center of the, or the focal point of the whole development view or strategy or paradigm of the Prime Minister and so on. So the local characteristics are very, very clearly there. And in fact, what Akhil mentions about specificities of the Assam process, his excellent chapter on the building, on the coming to power of BJP, all those minute things. You can see such attempts in all parts of the country. There are how they handle local identities, local issues, local histories, local problems, and so on, because the RSS gives that local flavor to the All India strategy to make the TTN, the theo-technocratic neoliberal process and the strategy work. That is the first point, and we have to understand this theoretical phenomenon in its larger global dimension to the Indian and the specific dimension. This, in Indian case, from the Congress system to the Hindutva regime, and the global case, I mean, imagine the 70s and 80s, I would say glorious decades in world history where the anti-colonial forces were shaping the discourse. But by the end of the 80s, the structural adjustment and neoliberal and this present phase slowly took over. And then all crisis in neoliberalism now got tied to observing the religious, ethnic, and the local dimensions in the most specific ways. The second very significant India case, to some extent the global case, is, and this has been raised by so many of you, the ethnic dimension, the multi-ethnic dimension. And I go back to my lecture, Brimber Deori lecture many years ago in Guwahati, in Cotton College. The distinction between obsessive self and creative self. How you turn obsessive self into a functional strategy, functional political strategy, and prevent the creative, now I call it the Ubuntu self, where selfhood and mutuality are integral to each other. I cannot exist without you. You cannot exist without me. So the Ubuntu framework is being prevented everywhere. So the exclusivity, and this is the, it was possible, perhaps, yes, Anupama is right, a national register was not necessary. It's still not necessary, it should be opposed. Because I have no time to dwell on that, because I believe, and I work for it, many of you are part of the same movement to treat South Asia as a geo-civilizational zone, possibly at one time with open borders and in future with open borders. There is no time to discuss that. So from that point, all identities, they have made a dirty word. I still value identity, but to reduce identity into an obsessive self, a chauvinistic self is the problem. Identity as a part of the, treating everybody as Atman is not a problem at all, you see. So how has the world treated, or the new discourse, the new, this has to be beyond the multiculturalism.
It's 19 hours.
Multiculturalism phase was yes, it had a creative function. From cultural exclusivism to multiculturalism. We have to really go beyond that and see new forced identities of multiple dimensions into integrated selves, constantly evolving. And the Assam Accord represented that. So I'm glad Anupama focused on that part. This breaking of the consensus, it's a great chapter. That should be the center of discourse. In fact, at the all India level and 1970s, the real post-colonial world had that consensus. What is the post-colonial world? And that is why we are so committed to the Bandung spirit now. Bandung spirit represented a consensus of that, what today we would call an Ubuntu self. Identities there which are self-developing, self-realizing, the Swarajist self, where everyone is Atman and we treat each other as souls, as selves, you see. So beyond multiculturalism, you today have that possibility of creative self. But what are the Hindutva forces doing? And Modi, Amit Shah, and Hemanta Biswa Sarma. And I feel, so many of them, some of us and those, Udan and those people are not here probably, we interacted so closely. And of course, the young Akhil then interacted so much. When Sarbanand was the ASU president, and so on. We had hopes of that kind of Ubuntu self, creative self. And we were hoping that the age of self, I call 21st century as the age of self. My first major reflection on 21st century in the year 2001 in a seminar is called the age of self, 21st century as age of self. And in People's Rights Introduction and many other essays, I reflected on that. 21st century is an age of self, but what kind of self? This is the battle. And the battle is now very fierce. They want everyone to be an obsessive self. And they call it the real self. It's not the real self, not even the actual self in Rousseau terms. It is the crude, exclusivist self which CAA as the act has represented, and the great movement which was suppressed and it's not dead, but it is suppressed. Therefore, the movement continues. So what is the, in fact, I have spoken already enough. I can easily get carried away on both these points. They're so close to both theory and political action that so many of us are involved in. Now, what I will do is, and I will just end the second point with one more sentence. Northeast is seen as a, the dream sellers economy has so well discussed it. I would only add that it is complemented by their notion of Northeast as a corridor, as an entry port, as a highway. I would go a step further, as a highway of globalization to the Northeast. Okay, without taking them as partners, without the local industry, local artisans, local agriculture, local economic history being part of it and contributing as equal partners. It is the Indian global capital, Ambani, Adani capital, Tata's capital, facilitated by this regime to use Northeast to enter the global market and use all the natural resources, the extractive economy, same as in Odisha, Jharkhand and other places, the extractive economy into the global neoliberal capitalist process. So the dream sellers economy is that's a very key chapter really in the book. Same is happening in Odisha. Same has happened even during the pandemic for all of India. No structural long-term measures, but only this beneficiary for temporary relief. Okay, so the Northeast has to be reconceptualized as a partner in democratic globalization, where a different kind of participating globalization takes place, not the monopolistic neo-colonial globalization. Okay, now three possibilities, like the three questions Suhas raised. I will also ask Akhil to reflect on them. How realistic am I in my, some people call me an optimist, in my anticipation that Indian democracy is really going to be even more dynamic and flourishing when it is challenged. It has been challenged by many dark times, and the present is another dark episode, dark phase. And it emerges from the anti-colonial struggle of India and the constitution. Now constitution has turned out to be a political force. And the citizens as people, as political subjects in the Rousseau sense, political participants, active subject as political participants, are asserting as creative self, as multi-layered federal structure. Why are the regime leaders forced to have these accord after accord? So many of them. I'm glad. I didn't know that 40 odd accords had taken place in Assam already by state and center and so on. Because they recognize But they turn every accord into a strategy of governance, not as a realization of the creative self where you become partners. India has a multi-layered, Balbir Arora is here, multi-layered federal polity. And I conceive the world as a multi-layered federal global polity, global Swaraj order. So there, the struggle has intensified and it will intensify. Every oppression has a counter resistance to it. So that's my first, that the constitution as a political force turning citizens into active political subjects are becoming, because beneficiaries are objects, right, of regime objects, green settler economies objects. They are turning NAPM, farmers movement, CAA, they all had turned or are turning Indian people into political subjects, active agents of transformation, social transformation. And in Northeast, you are seeing that. Akhil Gogoi should reconsider. He should not, he's still in that Medha Patkar phase in the Aam Admi Party. Medha Patkar came out of it. I was so delighted. Akhil Gogoi's strength is the people's movement, not Riser Dal, the people's movement. He is much more than any political party can offer. Okay, that's number one. Second, the extractive economy to a self-developmental economy at every level, all over India. You know, they are very reluctantly saying, okay, we are bringing a lot of capital to your area. But that capital is furthering this colonial, neo-colonial extractive economy of the last 100 years. More so now under this regime. That is my main criticism against Navin Patnaik. His excellent, very effective strategy of governance, far more than the BJP in Modi level or Hemanta level, is not going to work because it is tied also to extractive economy. You see, so extractive economy to self-developmental economy based on people's rights, local people's rights and political demands of local people. That is a global trend, India trend, all India trend, and in the Northeast, that demand is going to be more powerful. Not corridor, but partner. Not BCIM corridor, Northeast. You know, I'm very enthusiastic, as some of you know, about BCIM, Bangladesh, China, India, Myanmar partnership. But not as using local regions as corridors, highways, but as partners. Finally, political parties, as Samir emphasized, political parties are only part of the democratic system. People's movements are another big part. Cultural battles, I mean, I think this audience doesn't have to be, you always start with a song and end with something cultural. This audience knows the importance of culture to politics, movements to politics, political parties to politics. We don't denigrate political parties, nor do we denigrate people's movements, not culture, nor history, nor the so far unseen, untraced dimensions of democratic revolution. You know, this is the thing. Politics discovers possibilities all the time. That is the greatness of this act of politics, experience of politics, and study of politics. We have 3 generations of political scientists. I mean, this book, this discussion has enriched the discipline of politics and the political process and has raised so many possibilities. And I am very optimistic that people's movements in India and in Northeast are going to enrich the political process, and prospects of democracy will be brighter in Northeast, in India, and in the world. Thank you very much, and congratulations, Akhil.